Next, we have the Hull Community Walking Track and Turf Field discussion, which has been on our agenda every meeting since October. Basically, my intention is to continue to walk through the latest developments. In this one, it's not quite as timely just because of when our last meeting was, but on April 6th, we actually opened the bids. And so I wanted to basically give a little kind of overview of where the project is, kind of where it's come from, and we'll see. So kind of how we got where we are today. I think it's important to kind of recognize this whole project didn't really start in October of 2015. Anyone can walk to the football fields or the athletic fields. There's a lot more than football gets played there, and see that it's in a tremendous state of disrepair. And there's kind of first, the obvious question is, how did we get where we are? There's sort of the three strikes that Mr. Quattromoni explained, that we have basically the field has been historically overused. As we learned from Gale and Associates, our design firm, a grass field can support about 300 uses per year. A use being defined as a period of 1 hour activity on the field, either competition or people might often forget that the high school gym or the high school physical education department uses that field during the school day as well. Back in 2005, 2006, there were over 750 uses a year. It went down to 700 the next year, and then that's when Mr. Quattromoni, I believe, became the athletic director and dramatically limited the usage of that field. Practices haven't been allowed on that field. That's really only sort of a game use field since then. So from 2007-08 to 2013-14, there's been approximately 565 uses of that field each year. That's cutting it down by almost 50%, and it's still well more than any perfectly maintained grass field could possibly support. The next year, 2014-15, the youth soccer program in town actually moved to Cohasset Sports Complex, and so we're now at about 513 uses a year. So one of the first things the turf working group was dealing with was, the question of synthetic turf versus natural grass, and what is the material that's really going to support the uses that we need in town. Another issue with that field, not only is the level of use that we have because of our limited field space, is how that field was built as part of the redesign of this high school. Anyone who's lived in town for 15 years knows of the tremendous difficulties we had in the redesign and reconstruction of this high school for a number of reasons, not the least of which is the general contractor, Jackson Construction Company, went bankrupt in the middle of that process, and there were tremendous cost overruns, and the surety had to come in to deal with the over 2,000 punch list items that remained. And so there were a lot of issues. One was the costs were coming in too high, and so the field was actually originally designed to be synthetic turf, and that was one of the first things that was cut out as other things were coming in more expensive. An issue with the actual construction of that field, it is a normal athletic field is pitched from sideline to sideline for drainage purposes. This one is actually pitched from goal line to goal line. So it's built completely, 90 degrees from how it should be. The field has also been used, not only it's been used tremendously, but it's also been used a lot in inclement weather, which has been controlled, but that's still an issue that we have. And so in terms of the work being done correctly in the first place, a lot of the punch list items from the town were not corrected even when the surety was there, and the town actually took back a lot of credits for substandard work. So that field is, quite frankly, it was never built correctly in the first place. We have more uses for it. We need it to be used more than it can possibly support. And not the least of which is any grass field needs to be resodded every 6 years or so, is something that we've also learned from Gale. And so that is where we are today with the condition of that field. No matter how well maintained it could have been, it was always going to wind up in the condition that it is. So one of the things that we've done on this project, we've had a number of cost estimates as we've kind of looked, trying to design the best field design possible. Quite frankly, this whole project almost stopped before it even started. The very first cost estimate, dated December 14th, came in for something along the lines of $2.5 million for a synthetic turf field, which was well over our bond authorization passed at special town meeting. And so there's been a lot of work done to get this project down to where it is today. One of the things I distributed to everybody, there's a page where I walk through. I literally have 10 different cost estimates from December 14th down to the most recent two are dated March 29th. The two March 29th ones, I have one for a synthetic surface and another one for an apples-to-apples grass surface. The cost estimate from Gale on synthetic turf was a total, I don't have it broken, it's $1.65 million without the alternates, which was for additional lighting. I don't have the full price in front of me. Yes, I do. Yes, Gale's estimate for synthetic turf field was about $1.8 million. And it would be for the same project with a grass surface would be $1.3 million. So there is a cost savings to doing it in grass, but the idea that I've heard over the last 6 months that you can just go to Lowe's and get some seed and throw that down and you can grow your fields, it's not quite accurate. So we had these estimates. We narrowed the field down to where it's the most functional possible, keeping within cost parameters. The most important change that we made was back in late March, where we found some alternative for the lighting, where we found substantial savings in the lighting. One of the other issues with this field is that it's in its current state, it is not sufficiently lit for any sort of small ball sport at night. You can't play baseball or lacrosse or anything. To even practice those sports can be quite a challenge. We've heard from the coaches at times, the ball will literally disappear up in the sky and then come back down. So one of the most important things to this project is not only getting the field surface corrected, but getting the lighting corrected. And that would include having basically 6 light poles around the perimeter, which will fully light the rectangular field as well as the baseball, softball area fully. So it'll be fully functional at all times of day. We had the, so cost estimates are always nice, but one of the reasons why we continued to move this process along was to get actual bids. So we have an actual number that a real contractor would charge to build the project as designed. And when we had the opening back on the 6th, we had 4 bidders. The low bidder actually happened to be everyone's #1 choice. RAD Sports came in with a bid total of $1,544,322. When you carry 15% contingency, which is not necessarily something that you will use, but that's money that will cover any sort of unexpected cost overrun or something. So you don't have the big surprise. Even if you carried a 15% contingency, you're still under $1.8 million, which is substantially less than our bond authorization. Actually, it's $1,775,000. So you're about $149,000 under our bond authorization, and we still might not even need all of that money in the end. And so we could be saving even less, or more than our spending less, saving more. And so that is where we are. There's obviously a lot of, how we got to this. I actually put together a 3-page timeline of all of the effort that has been gone into this project, from the special town meeting to all the work that the turf field working group, as I've been calling it, all the meetings and phone calls, and they continue. I put this together on April 7th, and I've already thought of like 4 things that have happened since then. So I didn't want to share this with my wife to show how much time I've been spending on this as opposed to other things, but it's
Like a
also,
full-time job.
Now she
it
does.
kind of has been. I just wanted to kind of walk through, there's obviously a lot of questions about the sort of the infill, the crumb rubber question and how that factors into this. We spent a lot of time looking at alternatives. We had, Gail came into the school committee February 9th, talked about some of the alternatives. Basically, the estimated upcharge for the 2 primary alternatives that we looked at. One was EnviroFill, which is an acrylic coated sand, would cost about $360,000 more, which would be over our budget, no matter how much we pared it down. The other alternative that people have been looking at is TPE, which is a like a thermoplastic elastomer, which is basically like a rubber that's been kind of chopped up, a virgin material that's been chopped up into the pellets to be used. That would have an extra cost of about $580,000, both well over. There's just impossible. I spent a lot of time trying to work out how to make those sort of numbers fit. Some of the other benefits that I actually neglected. With putting in a synthetic turf surface, part of the beginning of that is removing topsoil from the project. And we found that the town will actually be using about half of the topsoil we remove. So the town is going to be using about 6,000 cubic yards of topsoil from this project to help with an expansion of the cemetery. So that's actually not a number of financial number that we factored in here, but that will save the town something along the lines of $100,000 in terms of working on that project. So that's kind of we've not only come in, $150,000 under our bond authorization, but we're saving the town substantial money in another fashion. Plus, one of the avenues that came up as we spent a lot of time with the youth sports and the town hall talking about how to make this project the best. It was brought to our attention that in the short to medium future, the L Street Athletic Complex is going to need to be redone. Even the best grass turf needs to be replaced every so often, and I think it's been probably the better part of 15 years since that's been done. And by having the configuration that we do here with the lights and the lines, we'll be able to have all those Little League games, youth softball games, all those things can be held here at our high school field to help with that process as well. So again, with the crumb rubber, I've distributed this. I think we've already had this. But talking about the cryogenic versus ambient rubber, the crumb rubber we'll be using is this cryogenic, which is this whole process of how it's developed, which makes it so that it doesn't float. Because one of the concerns that's been raised is what happens, this field is obviously in a flood zone, so what happens when, there is some sort of flood or coastal storm, which is a reasonable question. And so one of the things we've done, Gale Associates had found 3 different fields across New England, one at the Coast Guard Academy in New London, Connecticut, one at Tabor Academy, which is down, I think, in Marion, Massachusetts, and then Framingham State College, which is in a flood zone along a river, not a coast. But all 3 of these crumb rubber fields have had flooding in recent years. And so discussed with them what were the results, what happened. And they did not experience crumb rubber migration. They did not have the crumb rubber going into the river or going into the coastal environment. They, Jim Quattromoni spoke personally with the athletic director at the Coast Guard Academy, and they have not added any rubber infill to their field surface. They did not have any loss. So that's one of the things that we addressed. Obviously, there's the I don't know, I feel like I've been going on and on. Okay. I find it interesting. I'm going to go really quick to the podium. While that's warming up, I'll tell you. One of the things I did was was I became a big fan of Google Earth Pro, which is free if you ever want to go find cool satellite pictures from all over the world. And I spent a long time looking for other synthetic turf fields in coastal environments because there had been some concern that this was just a completely crazy thing to do. Why would anybody ever do this? And we found that people have been doing this all up and down the eastern seaboard. I found literally 23 different fields. As far north as Gloucester, going down to North New Jersey. And I think if I hit this, if I hit one of these, oh wait, that's right, this didn't work. I had to do this manually. So I will turn the microphone this way. I'll just hold it. All right, so I'm going to hit this.
Uh-oh. Got a mic.
Yes, all right, so here, Gloucester High School. You can see, obviously, here's the synthetic turf field right on the harbor, right next to the river right there. Have Massachusetts Maritime Academy in Buzzards Bay. You can see the synthetic turf fields. They're actually easy to spot because they have kind of an unnatural green color. So they're easy to find on the satellite photos. And actually, Gail actually added, I should say here, the elevations of each of these. So Gloucester High School's field is at elevation 1, so that's 1 foot above sea level. I can't recall what ours is. Ours is under 10, I know, because it's in the flood zone, but it's similar. Mass Maritime is at elevation 6. Tabor Academy has this bank here, a rectangular field, and the 2 rectangular fields as well as a baseball field at elevation 5. That one, as I said, had experienced flooding. There's one in Riverside Park, New Bedford. There's another one. I love the Scott's Miracle Grow Athletic Complex at Johnson & Wales University. Why Scott's is the name on a synthetic field, I'm not sure, but it is. That's right in Providence, elevation 9. You have the U.S. Navy submarine base in Groton, Connecticut, which is right here at elevation 24. That was actually another field done by RAD Sports. The U.S. Naval Academy Prep School in Newport, you can see is right there on the point. U.S. Coast Guard Academy in New London, elevation 5. You have, then we get to some of the more interesting ones that are a lot like ours. You have this one in Madison, Connecticut. You can see the beach right in the picture. This is a similar design as ours with the rectangular field and then this baseball quarter. You have some on Long Island, 2 in Oyster Bay. You have this one here at elevation 6 right on. This is actually not Long Island Sound. This is actually an inlet. But there's another one in town which I need to go visit because it is in between the bay and Long Island Sound, surrounded by sand. This one, a lot like ours. SUNY Maritime College in the Bronx has a field right on the, I guess that would be the East River, as well as Long Island Sound, another one in the Bronx. Then you have these ones in Manhattan, which are literally built elevation 2 on a pier, right out in the Hudson River. Then there's other ones in Brooklyn on Pier 5, here at elevation 1. Then down Verrazano Sports Complex, you have these 2 fields here. And then right on the other side, there's another one in Brooklyn. And then we had 2 in New Jersey. Right here, I was particularly looking for these to see effects of Hurricane Sandy. Actually, it was Hurricane Sandy which flooded the Coast Guard Academy field in New London. I'm not sure if this one actually got flooding in Long Branch, New Jersey, and then there's another one. Or is that it? I thought there was another one. Maybe not. That's the end of our little slideshow. So there are lots of these fields in very similar environments. So there you go. And let me see here, just a little bit more. We obviously, through the course of this, there's a question about the crumb rubber and what not only the player safety, if you will. One of the things with that Tabor Academy field complex, the local Conservation Commission required a water safety or a water quality testing of that field. And so we have that report which showed that there were no, the water coming off of that field met with all federal and state drinking water standards. There were no elevated levels of metals or anything like that. And quite frankly, the point was made that the water coming off the field was cleaner than the water in Marion in the bay. As well as, quite frankly, there is, to compare apples to apples, a grass field, fertilizers and pesticides and all the things that are used to keep a grass field going do cause runoff, and those really do cause all kinds of environmental harms that are not found with a synthetic field. And one of the questions, obviously crumb rubber is made from recycled tires. And there's this question about whether, chemical compounds in the crumb rubber, how would they migrate to a player or the environment? Number one thing that you ever see, water is nature's greatest solvent, and if water is not becoming polluted running through these fields, I really wonder how any compounds in the crumb rubber are going to be would migrate. Obviously, we also had the report from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health dated March 23rd, 2015, dealing directly with these questions with a turf field complex in Medway. And I think we've seen this quite a bit, but they discussed the concerns about cancer among soccer players in some of these, and they had found no scientific evidence linking or supporting that these fields were causing cancer in players. There's certainly, since we've started this project back in February, obviously the federal government has started this, 3 departments starting a study of not only crumb rubber fields, but it's also of playground surfacing, which also apparently is used from, created from crumb rubber, like the blue surfacing at the playground up by the DCR beach is actually also made from recycled tires. And so they are doing a study. One of the things that didn't make my list of what we've been doing back on April 14th, there was a webinar that the EPA and the CDC and the Consumer Product Safety Commission did. Ms. Peters and I listened to it here in the school department. They talked about what they were doing. And my real takeaway from this was they will, or they have pledged to give an update on their research, which is mostly a literature review, and the focus has been on data gap analysis was what they've been talking about, because there's been a whole host of studies of these issues with the safety of these fields, and what the EPA and the CDC and the Consumer Product Safety Commission are doing are really kind of looking if there's any kind of holes in any of their studies. And they will be doing that and will report back where they are by the end of 2016. I am, quite frankly, not confident that there's going to be, that simply isn't enough time for them to have conducted any new study. I think it was made clear what they're going to be doing is looking at existing studies and trying to identify the chemical compounds in crumb rubber, characterize the exposures to individuals, and then do outreach to key stakeholders. And from having listened to this, I really don't see any I really don't see any different analysis coming out. I do not see all of a sudden by the end of the year they're going to say, we shouldn't be using crumb rubber. 95+% of the fields in this country, synthetic turf fields, have been using crumb rubber for 15, 20 years. And we haven't had any study that said that they were unsafe to this point. And I don't foresee that in the future. But I think that kind of covers what I wanted to talk about at this point. And if anybody had any questions or comments, feel free, please.
So first off, I think I said this last week at the Temple when they had the debate. Eric has done one unbelievable job bringing this all together. And he's worked, they talk about let's work as a team. Eric has definitely been the ultimate team player. He's come on the school committee. He's done a great job with us. But not only that, but he's worked very well with the Board of Selectmen. He's worked well with the advisory board. He's worked with the administration to bring this whole thing together. It's almost like he's a consultant for Gil now. He knows more about these
Not for Gil,
these
for the
synthetic
town.
fields than like some of the people that work for Gil. But anyways, I just want to make a couple comments. Number one is that based on the numbers, the bids that came in, so we're going to save $150,000. So it's going to be less, $150,000 less than what we actually budgeted. So that's a positive. And then we also have this 15% contingency. In my opinion, based on my experience with construction projects, it's one thing if you're doing a renovation or you're building a new building, you're definitely going to end up using some of that contingency. But I think on an outside project where they've already done the borings as far as for the lighting, they really should pretty much know exactly what the, what's out there as far as things they may run into. So I would anticipate that really that contingency, we really shouldn't touch that too much. So I think, we're looking at a sizable chunk of money that we're not going to even have to use for this project, which we could do a number of things. We could change the terms of the bond. We could get less years. We could decrease the amount of money that we bond. We could do more roads. We could actually take out the same amount of money, but put it towards roads. I know there's been some concerns. I do read Facebook. I don't necessarily have Facebook, but I'm a creeper. And
You
so,
have a wife that has Facebook.
my wife has
That's right.
Facebook. So anyways, I do see some of the stuff that, people are talking about some of the sidewalks. And I know that Rhoda had some concerns about doing the middle of Nantasket Ave. If we save $400,000 or we save $300,000 or whatever the number is, we could put that towards doing additional sidewalks, put it towards doing additional roads. So I think that's all positive. The other thing, I saw something about, on Facebook, because that is like my best friend right now.
Call me, I'll talk to
But
you.
anyways, on Facebook, I was seeing they were talking about, how are you gonna pay for this $500,000 that you're going to need down the road to replace the synthetic field, which I think is an excellent question. And I think, somebody had mentioned that kids play different soccer tournaments and lacrosse tournaments, and sometimes there may be a tournament, but it might be in multiple cities and towns. So it could be in Marshfield, Situate, and Orwell. But in this case, Hull could potentially host some of these tournaments and probably make some money by hosting those tournaments, because people have to pay a fee to enter those. And I know my nephew plays hockey, and he played for Team Massachusetts out in Minnesota. And we stayed at a hotel out in Minneapolis, but there was 2 hockey rinks, which were both like 15 minutes away. So I definitely have experienced this myself as far as when I have a tournament to use multiple locations. But the only question I had, and David, I'm not sure if you can possibly answer this. I think like in Easton, we have a synthetic field, and we rent it out. So we have one rate for profit groups. Like we have a Easton Football League that sometimes uses our field. We also have, there's several soccer groups in the Easton, Stoughton, Brockton area that rents out our field. We charge them like full tilt, like they have to pay the full amount of money. Then there's some community groups. If you're a community group, we certainly give you a discount for that. And we have a revolving account that we put all that money in. So one of the things I wasn't sure if we have to do this, is there a way to segregate out, like have another separate revolving account that's dedicated just to the stadium, so that if we do get these
Stadium.
tournaments up to the
Stadium.
synthetic, sorry about that, but dedicated towards the synthetic field where, those monies could be put in that account, not touched. I'm not saying we're gonna have $500,000 at the end of this whole thing, but certainly it will look, we can put a little bit of a dent into whatever the replacement cost. So that was one of the things that I was thinking of. But again, I think, Eric, you've done a tremendous job on this whole project. And so I really want to commend you on that.
Thank you very much. Let me jump in before anyone else. I would be remiss. I certainly have put in a lot of time, but there are 4 other people that have put in, or actually 5 other people that have put in a lot of time as well. The whole members of the turf field working group, as we've called it. Myself, Dr. Tyrrell, Diane Sanick, who is not here, Jim Quattromoni, Matt Gillis, our former school business administrator, and now David DeGennaro. Our new, one of his first duties was coming in on Good Friday for a conference call. So it's been a lot of work by a lot of people. Jim particularly, I know, put in a lot of time making phone calls, getting in touch with other athletic directors on some of these issues with other fields, and everyone's done a lot of work. And actually, you also brought up one more thing when you talked about the borings and the test pits. You reminded me of kind of for the proof in the pudding of why it is we haven't had the most successful grass grown out there. We did have test pits done to determine the soil content out there, and the topsoil on our athletic field came back very sandy and has lots of small stones. And so that's kind of the proof of why it is that not only was this work substandard in the first place, but also why it's been so hard to grow grass out on that field.
Well, can I,
Go ahead.
well, can I jump in before Dave kind of
Sure.
speaks? I just have a couple, first of all, I'd just like to say that I think that regardless of the bad feelings from town meeting, that the ability to go through this RFP through a public process and, have it on our agendas has been very healthy for everybody involved. I think we have actual data now. There's been actual research on a lot of things, and it brings a lot of clarity to what has gone on out there. I just wanted to interject because I did some work over the last couple of days, because that has been what is the plan? How are we going to pay for the $500,000? So I've spoken with, I spent some time with Jim Quattromoni, Ed Whalen, who runs the youth program, corresponded with Chris Weber about what sort of the needs will be, because obviously our first priority, in my opinion, would be to the high school sports, and then to make sure that our youth sports have availability to it, since the whole goal was to increase usage. So in talking to them and kind of mapping out this, just the school year season, it looks like Sundays are a great day, which is generally when the club soccer and the club lacrosse play. So given that and mapping it out as far as what the needs would be from all of our youth organizations, it looks like we would have 24 days from March 21st to June 17th, and then August 15th to November 30th, where we could essentially rent the field out for 10 hours each day, for a total of 240 hours. In talking to people that run club soccer sports and Weymouth Rec and what they charge, that's $150 an hour that you can get for those. So the potential revenue in just that limited time, which wouldn't include summer camps, would be $36,000 a year to the schools. I know Marshfield just put in a brand new one, and their first year for revenue projections and renting out to club sports was $33,000 a year. So this is obviously preliminary. I think it could be on the low end. I believe that if we include summer camps, and if someone wants to run a summer camp 8 to 12 or 8 to 1, and they've got the choice between a Pembroke or a Marshfield or kind of coming down to Hull, I think that we could certainly sell it a lot better. The other piece that would tie into this is that the economic development for the rest of the town, as far as this goes. Between Saturday and Sunday, as a family and traveling to different locations, we probably spent about $300 in meals and Gatorades and different things that we picked up as we traveled between venues out of town to go to those events. So we certainly have a boatload of wonderful restaurants in this town, and I do believe that they could benefit the more people that we get in here from out of town and enjoy it. So what I was going to ask tonight is that, I don't know if there's a motion that's in order, but if we could make a motion that if this does pass, that we would create a revolving account to put any funds that are generated from the rental of the turf field into that revolving account. And I sort of almost envision it as like two, maybe, and I don't know, we'd have to decide this percentage once we figured out how much money we could generate, but one piece of it could go into sort of, under an umbrella, one piece could go into maintenance, the annual maintenance, even though we know it's only $1,000, just to make sure that we've got money to do that, and then the rest could be towards replacement. And we could start to build up, a replacement, so that in here, hopefully 14, if we can get our field to last that long, we will be able to replace the carpet without any sort of look to the town to try to do that and make it self-funding. And I think by doing that, it will show the town that, to try to trust us, that this is what will happen. So I don't know if I should make that motion tonight, if the board is is willing to do that, but I do think there is the potential for revenue, and given just a real quick down and dirty, I don't think $36,000 is unrealistic, in my opinion.
We can do that administratively, or you can take a vote and we can then do it.
Okay, I'll wait till sort of the rest of the comments from the board, and then we
I'd
can.
like to hear what Dave has to say.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
I just wanted to comment.
I just wanted to give him some figures to work with.
Just to comment on the revolving funds. Yes, you can set up a revolving account specifically for field maintenance, and if you wanted a separate revolving account for replacement, you could do that also. I know some towns charge a surcharge when they rent the fields, and the surcharge piece of it goes towards replacement of the fields, which is not a lot of money. It's not gonna, pay for the entire thing, but you can adjust your fees depending on what type of groups use the field too, so you can, charge a higher fee to for-profit groups and a lower fee to non-profit groups. So there's a lot of different ways of looking at it.
Do we have to go to town meeting to establish a revolving account for that, or is it already
I
established?
think it would be under the facilities
It's under that facility
account,
one,
yeah, so I don't believe you'd have to do that. You would, as a committee, I think, vote to establish that account for maintenance and the replacement of. But it can be done.
No, I think that's good.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the idea of renting out the field is great. Thank you for doing that work and figuring out the estimate for that. Another question would be, in the summer, that spot would probably get very warm. I know that that's another thing with Crumb Rubber. At their academy, they're installing on their campus turf right now, and they're going with an alternative field just because of summer camps and summer programs. So that's something, if there is time, next time when we're going forward with this, there's the possibility of moving towards an alternative infill. Maybe that's something to think about if there is a high need for summer camps. But the temperature of the turf itself is just kind of not making that possible, so.
Okay.
Other than that.
Did you have any comments, Marion?
Eric, I just want to thank you for the astonishing amount of work that you've put into this. Thank you.
Again, it's not just me. I have put in a lot of work. But it's definitely not just me.
But you've clarified so much. I
You've
really
done
do
so
appreciate
much.
it. Thank you.
I appreciate it. One thing, actually, the very last thing I think on our that 3-page list of things to do is actually tomorrow. We have another meeting, our third hearing with the Conservation Committee. We're scheduled to meet with them at 7:50. And that we've been meeting in the selectmen's room, but the selectmen will be meeting, so we'll be upstairs in the ladies' room, or the gentlemen's room. whichever-
Oh, the gents'
whichever
room.
it be, yeah. Oh, yes.
Just a quick question. You hear a lot of figures and everything. I apologize if I missed the conversation. But as part of the thinking and motivation behind this, is this going to positively impact the enrollment question that we keep hearing about?
I mean, I would think so. I don't know if we could quantify that through anything, but I mean, I think that we're providing excellent facilities, we're providing an excellent education, and that's an extension of our facilities there, and we have a lot of teams that come down and play on that, and I think if they came down and saw that, and if they see the debt exclusion pass, and they see us doing our roads, and they see a lot of good things, and us investing in ourselves, I mean, I would move here, but I love it here, so. I don't think it can negatively impact it. I think that, we've got a great lacrosse team now, too, so. If any of those Cohasset kids want to move here, now might be the time. So I don't think, it can't hurt, and I think it could be a piece of how we're investing in a town as a whole with the debt exclusion.
It could, I'm not sure if it would necessarily draw many people in from out of town, but I think it would definitely impact someone's decision about, when they're getting to high school, whether they go to a parochial school or a private school, or whether they want to stay here in town. Athletics are, important to many people, and, the kind of facilities that you have, you're obviously, with the budget cuts that we had in the not-too-distant past, led to a lot of strain on having to do all that fundraising and things just to keep the athletic programs going. And so when you have a commitment to, I say improve the facilities, but it's really to bring them to a level that they should be. All of our neighbors, except for one, has synthetic turf field. And so it could make kids stay in town, for sure. All right, so
I'd like to make a motion to establish, if it's passed, to establish a revolving account for maintenance, that any proceeds received from rental of the field would go into either a maintenance account or a replacement account based on a percentage that we decide at a future date, I guess. Is that?
That's good.
You should.
I'll second that.
all right, so a motion by Ms. Peters, a second by Ms. Hart.
Nope.
All right, was it Ms. Huxtable? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Huxtable seconded that motion. Is there any further discussion or comment? That's a great idea. So, we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Can I add one more thing, since you're on?
Please, go right ahead.
It just came up, and I just wanted to get this out into the public. Apparently, East Bridgewater has a walking track and field near their school, and the way that they have gotten, not around the safety concerns, but how to deal with the safety concerns and allow people to use it during the day, is that if, as a regular user, and I thought every Tuesday I would want to go walk the field during school hours, is that they are Cory checked. They have to go into the office, they're Cory checked, and they're, so that we know that hopefully they're not bad people, not that a Cory check flushes out everybody, but that they would be Cory checked, they would go in and check in, they would get some type of medallion, and they would be allowed to use the walking track so that staff would know that they are in fact okay to use the field. So, you know, if this passes, I think that that's something, because I know that's been a concern, and I don't think anybody wants anybody unattended on a field, but if there was a process to allow people to use it during school hours without infringing on PE classes or anything like that, it might be a route to go, so.
Absolutely, not just the field, but the walking track. You know, one of the things that, as we got prices down, we were able to have a rubberized surface on that walking track, so it'll be a lot better for people's joints than just running on the streets. So it's certainly making it more available to the community, I think, was always part of the project. You know, my whole thought process on this has been just focusing on the next day and not getting too far ahead of ourselves. So we'll definitely deal with that when we
Yeah,
get
that's
there.
fine.
But there's, you know, when we started this project, there were about 1 million obstacles. Now we're down to the thousands. But we'll get there if we just keep taking one at a time.